said, my name is Laura, and I am from South Dakota School for the Deaf. And in Mark's honor, I'm not signing because I tend to be a little bit more Englishy, so I'm going to let the ASL Pro go at it for me. So, and I like my name signed, so I have a deaf sister. That's how I got interested in working with deaf and hard of hearing kids. And when I was growing up, my name was always Laura, like tree, because you know trees are tall too. So then as I got a little bit older, she decided that that maybe wasn't as appropriate, so she changed my name to Tall, Laura Skolton. That's how my name was given to me. So first, I'd love to hear, how come you guys are all here? What's your interest in ASL? Who wants to say, why did you guys take ASL? Yeah.
I want to be an interpreter.
Want to be an interpreter? Awesome. Yes. Oh yeah, I can't move. I tend to move and walk around when I present, so this is going to be really, really hard for me to stay in one place. Yes?
My mom signed with me a lot when I was little, and so I had an interest from that. I think it's a beautiful language. So.
Okay. Just new sign language?
She knew some. She was a special ed teacher before I was born.
Wonderful. Anybody else? Second foreign language requirement, is that why some of you were taking it? Maybe some of you in there? Yeah, okay. Well, I always just like to know what interests people in it. And it's really interesting when you talk to groups. There's usually all sorts of different reasons. Sometimes it is you want to become an interpreter. You've had experience, and a lot of people have had a family member or someone that they've interacted with, and they saw ASL and they just loved the language and decided to pursue it a little bit further. So it's kind of fun to see what brought us all to this class. So SDSD. Do you guys know anything about South Dakota School for the Deaf Outreach Program? Has anybody ever interacted with anybody from our program? Okay, one person. Okay, so this will be interesting. So this is just kind of an overview of our program, and I'm going to try to stand still. I'll try to stay right here so I can be on the camera. But okay, so what I thought we would do first of all, a little bit about my background before we go into this. So I have been with South Dakota School for the Deaf kind of off and on for 18 years, so quite a long time. Even before I got to South Dakota School for the Deaf, I worked for Omaha Public Schools in a total communication program. Anybody not know what total communication is? Okay, so total communication is when you're talking and signing simultaneously. And we use more signed exact English. So if I wanted to say, my name is Laura Skolton, I would say, my name is Laura Skolton. Okay, so you kind of add, it's very Englishy. And so your speech kind of matches how you sign. Okay, and you use both talking and signing, both of them. So I worked in that program. And then I've actually worked in Sioux Falls Public Schools with some of the deaf and hard of hearing kids. I just have always been really, really drawn to this area. One of my very favorite. My actual background is a speech language pathologist. So I've worked with promoting oral skills with deaf and hard of hearing kids, but also have promoted sign, increasing language through sign language. So, okay. So what do you guys know about audiograms? Have you learned about this yet? You haven't learned anything about an audiogram. I see that maybe kind of knows somewhat. All right, so this is a really interesting thing. In the world of deaf education, parents, when a child is identified with a hearing loss, this is one of the very first things that parents are introduced in. They're like thrown into the medical world and talking about the hearing level. And so parents quickly learn kind of what this is all about. But one of the things I wanted to show you is, here is kind of, if a baby was tested, or a little person was tested, all of the marks of when you have a hearing test, and I won't go super into detail about that, would be all up here, okay? So they test the left ear and the right ear, and you'd have a little X for the left ear and little circles for the right ear. And we would see how the child does with low frequencies to high frequencies, from soft sounds to loud sounds, okay? And so we kind of determine how much access they have to spoken language. Then, what we really pay attention to is you want to have, if you want to have full access to spoken language, all of those X's and O's need to be above what we call the speech banana, okay? So if your hearing level is anywhere below this 20, kind of this 15, 20 mark right here, you're not going to have access to everything in our spoken language, okay? And why is that important? Super important when we think about babies, right? So those first 3 years are the very most important time for brain development. And I think the interesting thing is a lot of people think about hearing level being about your ears. And hearing level is not about your ears, it's about brain development, okay? And why do I say that? If we are in an auditory environment, we're learning to listen, right? And as we learn to listen, we eventually are able to use our language system. If these marks are below where we need to, we're not going to have full access to that spoken language system, right? So it's almost like we're not having that constant feeding into that brain development, okay? If I'm a baby and I'm a signer, right? And maybe my family doesn't know sign language yet, or they're developing sign, or I don't have good sign language models, we're not having that good access to brain development, right? So we look at this, and it kind of just determines, okay, what can we do to improve access? Are we going to put some sort of equipment on? Do the parents want hearing aids, or cochlear implants, or Bajas, so that child has better access to these speech sounds to promote brain development? Or does that family want to pursue sign language so that brain is getting fed information to promote brain development? And here's the other thing, it can be both. It doesn't have to be either or. We have many, many families that pursue sign language and oral language too. But the main thing is we tell everybody, we just want that brain to get fed. That's how I look at this. I don't want it to be all about a medical diagnosis with my babies that I work with. I want it just to be with the parents, we just need to get that brain stimulated and consistently. Yeah?
You mentioned about what is that?
So that's interesting. I wish we would have that, some of that equipment here. It's called a bone anchored hearing aid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so some of those, they're really big in South Dakota. South Dakota, for some reason, has an unusually high number of people that are deaf in one ear, like profound deafness in one ear. So what they do is they wear this little kind of box on their deaf ear side, okay? And what they do, there's a surgery where there's a titanium screw that is put into the bone right here. And you can't do it until they're about 5 years old because this bone isn't ossified yet, so you have to wait till they're a little bit older. And then what they do is this little box bypasses portions of the ear and sends it over to the good ear. I've also worked with kids who have no ears, and so it just bypasses that external part of the ear that's didn't develop correctly. So there's a lot of variety of reasons that you would use them, but great question with it. So anyway, this is something that is very, very relevant when we're looking at deaf and hard of hearing kids. But again, the one thing I don't really pay that much attention to, and it's good to kind of know what access to speech kids have, but I look like this is more of a teaching tool, again, about how do we get this kid good access rather than just talking about what the ears are capable and not capable of. Okay. All right, have you guys ever heard a hearing loss simulation? This is really interesting. I just recently started with the cutest little girl. She's 15 months old, and she's in daycare, and she has bilateral hearing aids. Okay, so 2 hearing aids, and she has a severe hearing loss. And daycare, mom was super frustrated. Mom has a severe bilateral hearing loss, wears hearing aids. They use oral language to communicate, no sign language. And Mom was super frustrated because every time she would go to daycare, she found the hearing aids in the backpack. And Mom knows that you need to be, right, feeding the brain, consistent access to develop language. Whatever modality you pick, it needs to be consistent. So the daycare said, well, she seems like she hears okay. You know, if we call her name, she looks at us, because she's 15 months. She's not going to be doing a lot of communicating at 15 months. If we tell her to do something, she does it. So what I finally ended up doing is just sharing with them a simulation about what her hearing level was. And the cool thing is now they're trying to keep those hearing aids on very, very consistently. So it's kind of good to know what the hearing level is, and then I think you're a little bit more committed to whatever communication modality you picked.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Can you guys
5,
see that?
6, 7. You're on my apartment building on Granite Avenue.
So normal hearing level. You can see everything's above the speech banana. It's going now.
Just like that big tycoons I play to win. I've already paid up or get out of the game.
Moderate hearing level. See how now we're missing part of the speech banana with that red line. Severe hearing level. Now look at how much we're missing of that speech banana. Were you guys able to hear that okay? It's not super loud.
Yeah, it's gonna try for another
Pardon me.
video.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I was just letting you know it was gonna play
Oh,
another video.
yeah. So kind of interesting with that. It's very impactful, I think, when you see or you hear those kind of simulations about the importance of having either that amplification or that consistent sign so that you have access to that language. Okay, so one of the things about our program, any kiddo in the state of South Dakota that has an identified hearing loss can be in our program. So all they have to have is an identified hearing loss. It can be a mild hearing loss, it can be a profound hearing loss, it can be in one ear, it can be in both ears. So that's really the only criteria for our program. The program did shift back in 2009. Prior to 2009, we did have an on-campus school. So when I first started at School for the Deaf, we had over 100 kids on our campus here in Sioux Falls. And they were all in one program, and the program was a signing program. Then after a while into it, we split into two different programs. We split into an ASL program, and then into a program that was auditory oral, so kids who use sign communication and kids who use spoken English and listening as communication. By 2009, we became an outreach-based program only. So, and the reason that happened was when they did a survey, well, first of all, kind of back up, the numbers shrunk. So prior to a few years, probably like 2006, 2007-ish around there, our numbers had significantly decreased. And then when we finally went to an outreach model only, I think we had 8 kids left in our program. So there was a huge change from when I started until when I ended. And one of the reasons that that did change, there were some changes here in South Dakota. We used to have a big organization called Communication Services for the Deaf, that we had a lot of deaf individuals that worked there, and therefore some of the kids were with them also. But what we were finding from parent surveys, many parents wanted to educate their kids at home in their local communities and weren't sending them to School for the Deaf any longer. So our numbers were decreasing. With that shift to an outreach model, we have a new logo and a new mission statement. And we'd really encourage you to go out to our website. Pretty cool out there. The thing I love about that is we have so many signed resources. And the cool thing is we've had deaf community members that have helped develop those things. So if you go out there, you'll see maybe some faces that you've seen in your programming here or around the community. But we have signed stories, early signed stories, more advanced signed stories, vocabulary, all sorts of resources out there. We have different individuals who have deaf community members that are sharing about their experiences with South Dakota School for the Deaf. So just a really good resource, very rich with the deaf community in there. We also have a Facebook page, and we post lots of just informative things. We try to touch on both signed, things that would be important to individuals who use sign, and also information that would be important to those who are pursuing spoken English. And then we also have a Pinterest board. So kind of check out some of those things. We have lots of good resources out there. Okay, so SDSD outreach, kind of interestingly, we are coupled with School for the Blind, so in Aberdeen. So our superintendent oversees both programs. So she goes back and forth between Aberdeen and Sioux Falls. So, and that's been probably, oh my goodness, quite a few years now. I'm not even exactly sure when she started to take over. Then after that, we have, over our outreach program, we have Kim Wadsworth. She is an Augie Deaf Ed graduate. So she oversees all of us. And then we have 11 outreach consultants. So we have about 565 kids that we serve in our program, somewhere around there across the state of South Dakota. And South Dakota is divided up into geographical areas, and each consultant serves that area. I serve Yankton, Vermilion, Wagner, Alcester, Irene, Wakanda. That's kind of my area in that portion of South Dakota. But we also have a consultant in Aberdeen, a consultant in Deadwood, a consultant in Hot Springs, a consultant in Pierre. We have several of us that are based out of Sioux Falls. I'm based out of Sioux Falls. Jody Schneider's based out of Sioux Falls. Julie is based out of Sioux Falls. And Sherry Juergens is based out of Sioux Falls. We also have added one that's not on here. We've added a consultant who's based out of Rapid City just this year. She's new to our team. Then, how do we get our referrals? So it's what we love to do, how our program is fed as far as kids that need our services. We have a pretty good relationship with audiologists all across the state. So if an audiologist identifies a new little person, they'll make a referral over to our program. When we go out and talk to groups like you, if you guys know about our program and then you might be interacting with someone who has a kiddo with a hearing loss, you might just let them know about our program. We also have, how many are you familiar with Birth to 3? So Birth to 3 is another program in the state of South Dakota. And if you have a child that you think has any developmental issues, you can request an evaluation, and then you're provided with free services from birth until the day before their 3rd birthday. And that could include physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, or an educator, okay? And so that program has things that we call service providers. And so if they identify one of the kiddos that they're serving also has a hearing loss, they make a referral to us too. So that's a big source of referrals. And then as we're in schools more and more, oftentimes we are approached by special education directors or personnel in the school. As soon as they know that someone has a hearing loss, they just reach out to us. So that's where we get our kiddos from. And the interesting thing with what we do, I always say if you have attention issues, SDSD outreach program is the very best job that you could possibly have. We never, ever do the same thing 2 days in a row. Every day is different. Every age group that you work with is going to be a little bit different every day because we have babies. I have 6-week-old babies, and then you can work with kids all the way up to 18 or 21, whichever one comes first. So some kids stay in the educational system until 21. Some graduate traditionally at 18. So we have a huge variety of the ages that we work with in our program. One of the big things that we do, if there's a little one who's just been identified, we go into the homes and we work with those parents about anything to do with hearing loss.